Okay, this week I wanted to talk about something that is mysterious to many musicians, myself included. Diminished sounds. And I talked about diminished sounds in my original Guitar Tips series on YouTube, which if you've been following along for a while, you may recall. I'll post a link to it along with this video so you can check that out. There's some, I think some good stuff there, but I wanted to try a different angle. I've been thinking about diminished sounds a little differently over the past few weeks, and I just wanted to share my findings with you in hopes that they would be interesting and valuable to you in your own musical explorations. So I'm going to call this tip, this pro tip, diminished diatonicism. Guitar Tip Pro Episode 2, diminished diatonicism. My amp is a little rumbly. I may have to Fonzie it a little bit as we go, but anyway, lest you think I'm at the ocean and waves are crashing, it is just, I think it's a bad rectifier tube or something like that. Anyway, diminished diatonicism, what is it and why are we going to talk about it? Oh, Fonzie time. Let's see. All right, we'll come back to it, to the amp I mean, and see if we can keep it on the quiet side. Okay, well, here's the thing. When we talk about diminished stuff, when we study it, we tend to think about it in terms of functional harmony. In whatever chord progression we're playing, we tend to think about diminished chords as, you know, a sort of a passing chord, a way to get from one place to another. So if we're in the key of D, for example, and we want to get to E minor, which is also in the key of D, that's a diatonic chord in the key of D. One way to do that is to pass through a D sharp diminished chord, and then we get to E minor. And so you might have a progression like that: D, D sharp diminished 7th, E minor, A or A7, and back to D. Pretty typical. So, and so on. Diminished chords, that's sort of one way to look at them. But what I've noticed is that if you look at old-fashioned tunes, and I tend to like old-fashioned tunes, you know, American songs from the 20s and 30s and 40s, a lot of times when they use diminished chords, there is a diatonic note in the melody. So rather than the diminished chord being a way to get at notes that are outside the key like that, I mean, that you hear that too, but quite often they're snuck in, kind of disguised diminished chords. They're disguised because they have a note from the major scale of the key that they're in as the top note, so you almost don't notice them. So this is related not only to one of my original Guitar Tips, Let's Demystify Diminished stuff. It's also a little bit related to Bury the Tritone, which you might remember if you were into the original Guitar Tip series. And the theory behind Bury the Tritone had to do with when you're playing a dominant chord, such as, like, let's say D7, it's a little bit clunky to have the tritone of that chord, the part that makes D7 so D7y, makes it want to go somewhere. If you have that tritone on top, it tends to call attention to it, whereas if you play a voicing like this, you still have the F sharp on top, but by putting this 9, the E, between the flat 7 and the 3 kind of warms it up a little bit. That's one way to do it. So you can hear the difference between this and this. And why I think that sounds warmer, this second voicing, is because we don't have this glaring edgy tritone on top. And that relates to how we're going to look at diminished chords in this tip. So we're going to kind of hide the diminished chords behind the notes of the scale. Let's stay in the key of D. So in order to do that, we're going to look at each melody note, each possible note of the D major scale, and see which diminished chords we might be able to sneak in under those melody notes. And there'll be some different choices. And by looking at that, then you can go forward, and as you write your own tunes or reharmonize other people's tunes, when you see those melody notes, you'll have some choices of diminished chords that you can use. So does that make sense so far? I hope so. Before we get to the melody notes, though, let us look at harmonic function first in a kind of simplified way. So what we're going to do is every diminished chord that we encounter is going to be, we're going to think of it either as a 1 diminished, so in this case a D diminished, a 4 diminished, well, I didn't play a D diminished, so D diminished could be this, D diminished 7th. It could be a 4 diminished, so G diminished 7th, or it could be a 5 diminished 7th, so A diminished 7th. So everything will be either D diminished 7th, G diminished 7th, or F sharp, or A diminished 7th rather. And each one of those has, because of the symmetrical way that diminished chords are built. I hope this is making sense. I'm not going to break down every single step, so if you're confused about anything, write me a note or comment here, and I'll break it down further. I don't want to break things down too much, or this will just be an epic lesson. And I'm going to assume that some of this stuff is already familiar to you. I hope that it is. If it's not, let me know and we can break it down further. So within D diminished 7th, because of the symmetry of it, you've actually got 4 chords. So D diminished 7th is also F diminished 7th, and is also A flat diminished 7th, and is also B diminished 7th. Those are all contained in this same 4-note voicing. So that gives you 4 of the 12 possible roots. There's 12 possible roots in chromatic music. So here we've got D, F, A flat, or G sharp, and B, all as possible roots of a diminished 7th. That's off the 1. Off of the 4, that's G diminished 7th. That is also E diminished 7th. It's also B flat or A sharp diminished 7th. It's also C sharp or D flat diminished 7th. So now we've got 8 possible diminished roots. And then off of A diminished 7th, that's 5 diminished 7th. We've got A diminished 7th, C diminished 7th, F sharp diminished 7th, and E flat or D sharp diminished 7th. So now we've got all 12 possible roots. D, F, A flat, B, G, B flat, D flat, E, A, C, E flat, F sharp. And those could be possible roots. Those could also be possible melody notes. We don't need all 12 of them as melody notes. Remember, this lesson is really meant to be about harmonizing melodies. So since we're in the key of D, we need to have access to these notes: D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, and D. Those are the notes of a D major scale. So we're not going to really need all 12 kind of diminished chords. We're just going to need 7 of them. Okay? So when we're in the key of D and we've got a D in the melody, there's a pretty good chance that we're playing a D diminished sound. So here's D major, D diminished, and back to D, or that could go, it could actually move somewhere. It could go D diminished to A, and back to D. So if we've got a melody note E, that could be an E diminished. And that's going to probably want to go back to D, or it might want to resolve to B minor. So hear how smoothly that moves? Okay, so that's an E diminished on the E melody note. On an F sharp melody note, we're likely we'll have an F sharp diminished 7th chord. So let's see. And that could lead us to G. So, or could lead us to E minor. Note that E minor is the relative minor of G major. So each of these diminished chords could go to, most likely to a diatonic major or minor chord that are relative to each other. You know what I mean? So back at the beginning again, D diminished tends to want to go to A or to F sharp minor or A, and A and F sharp minor are relative. E diminished tends to want to go to D or to B minor. D and B minor are relative. F sharp diminished tends to want to go to G or to E minor. And again, G and E minor are relative. A diminished tends to want to go to G or to E minor. B diminished, and remember again, we're just going up the scale and trying to harmonize each note of the D major scale. So we've done D, E, F sharp, G, A, now we're on B. B diminished tends to want to go to A, or what's the relative minor of A? It's F sharp minor. So and then the last one is C sharp diminished, and that's going to tend to want to go back to D or to B minor. So anywhere along the major scale that you put you can put a diminished chord. So C sharp diminished maybe to B minor, A diminished maybe to G, F sharp diminished maybe to E minor, D diminished maybe to A, and that's enough diminished. Let's go back home. Okay, so that covers a lot of possibilities. Now there's another set of choices, which is that because of the way the diminished scale works, if we're in D, we've got to create a diminished scale, it's not only these 4 notes, which are the diminished 7th arpeggio, but there's 4 other notes which lay a whole step higher than each of these 4 notes, or another way to think of it is a half step lower than. So let's think of it as a whole step higher than first. So above D, there's E. Above F, there's G. Above G sharp, there's A sharp. Above B, there's C sharp. And then back to D. So we have, here's the arpeggio. And here's the scale. So again, you could also think of it as half step below. Excuse me. So half step below D, half step below F, half step below G sharp, half step below B, half step below D, or whole step above. Hope I'm doing this right. So what that means is, because it's an 8-note scale, besides being able to harmonize each of these melody notes as a possible root of a diminished seventh, it could also be one of the color tones that's, remember, a whole step above or half step below. So when we've got D in the melody, not only could we harmonize that with a D diminished, but we could harmonize it with, say, well, this could be a color tone of C diminished with a D color tone. So, or if we think of this in the paradigm of relating to the key of D major, and everything is going to be a 1-4-5, we would think of this as 5 diminished, A diminished seventh with a D melody note, and that's going to tend to want to go to the 4. Or to the 6 minor. You hear that? So that's different from having this D melody note be part of a D diminished. Now it's part of the A diminished, 5 diminished of the key of D. And 5 diminished tends to want to go to 4 or to 6 minor. When we've got E in the melody, instead of E diminished 7, it could be, this is a 1 diminished, this is D diminished 7th, but with E in the melody. And where does that want to go? 1 diminished tends to want to go to 5 or to 3 minor, which is the relative minor of 5. So that's interesting. That's actually, you could think of that as A sixth or as F sharp minor, first inversion. Just voice leading led me there. Okay, so F sharp in the melody could be, as we said before, we could think of this as a 5 diminished chord, A diminished, or now if this F sharp is a color tone, this could be 4 diminished. Could be G diminished 7 and 4 diminished. Where does 4 diminished want to go? Tends to want to go to 1 or to the relative minor of 1, which is 6 minor. So again, that's 4 diminished 7th, G diminished 7th. So if we have a melody that goes, So I used that to get to the 6th minor. So in each case, now we've got 2 diminished choices for these scale tones of the key of D. We've got the diminished root, or it could be a color tone. So here on the G melody, could be G diminished, or it could be a color tone off of the 1 diminished. This could be D diminished. And that's going to want to resolve probably to the 5. So 1 diminished wants to go to the 5. So, excuse me. I'll try that again. So I'm thinking A in the key of D, that's 5. That's D diminished with a G melody. A. Hear that? Or it could go to F sharp minor. Hear the difference? This is G melody as G diminished. G melody as D diminished, different quality. Now A could be, as we said before, could be A diminished 7th, but it could also be what is that? We can look at that. That is a 4 diminished. That's G diminished. Hello. Did I mention I'm in New York City? Yeah. I'm in New York City as I record this, so sirens and stuff. That sound, G diminished, is going to want to go back home to D. So and I've been using kind of the same voicing here, but this is another possibility. So if you think of like this G diminished 7th shape, we could put the A on top here. That's a possibility. And that resolves nicely to D. Or could go to B minor, which is the relative minor of the D. So, okay, what have we not got? Oh, B diminished. So, let's see. So, as a color tone, that's let's see, 5 diminished. Is that right? Yeah, that's A diminished with a B color tone. And that's going to tend to want to go to G, to the 4, or to E minor. There we go. And then T, the C sharp, T as in do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. C sharp, that is going to be a 1 diminished, D diminished with C sharp on top. These are some voicings. Looks a lot like C sharp 7. But I'm thinking of it as D diminished 7 with a C sharp, which is the, if you think of it relative to D diminished, it's the major 7. playing now just up a D diminished 7th arpeggio and putting C sharp on top. So that's that sound. D diminished wants to go to A or F sharp minor. So now we've got, for every possible melody note in the key of D, we've got 2 different diminished possibilities that we can use depending on which direction we want to take it. So there's a lot of forks in the road harmonically for every melodic note. So how would you practice this? Well, you could do what I've been doing throughout this lesson, which is just play a little melodic run, or little melodic short theme, a few notes, and then when you get to a note that you want to stop on, stop there and see what the choices are. So let's play so on D, remember we could have D diminished, which tends to then want to go to A, or we could have A diminished, which tends to want to go to E minor or G. So it just depends on where you want to go. Or on E diminished, we could do this. And so on. So you kind of have to throw, as we say, sometimes this is an old expression, throw some spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. I've given you formulas here, and if you're a patron at one of the higher tiers, you'll get a PDF of all this formula stuff. If not, go back and watch this video again and take notes. All the information that you need is here. But if you want to have a handy dandy PDF already made up nice and neat in Sibelius, I'm glad to provide that to the upper tier patrons. Thank you. Best thing you could do is experiment, throw some spaghetti at the wall, see what sticks. Also, I always recommend composing, write a tune, and implement this stuff. I find that the stuff that I use in my compositions tends to be the stuff that becomes part of usable stuff, rather than just being caught up in some dusty old file cabinet way in the back corners of the basement of my brain. If I've bothered to create something new with a concept, it tends to be stored a lot closer to where I need it to be, in my ears and in my imagination and at my fingertips, which is really where I want it. So if you like these sounds, write a tune. It doesn't have to be a symphony. It could be 8 bars or a few different 8-bar things, or whatever. But get to it. It's not going to become part of your vocabulary just by understanding the theory. Just understanding the theory, that's the basic level. You must understand the theory, but that doesn't make it automatically part of your vocabulary. So the vocabulary comes with usage, and I think with creative usage. And if you feel like it, and you're on a gig or at a rehearsal or something, throw some of this stuff in and see what happens. You have to be willing to make some mistakes and learn from the mistakes, one way or the other. Either, yeah, that sounded great, or that didn't sound great, and let me figure out why. So that's diminished diatonicism. I hope this made a lot of sense to you. I hope you find it valuable and something that you can take into your own musical world. Okay, so I'm going to sign off here for Guitar Tips Pro. I'm Adam Levy. Stay tuned and take good care.